So we're searching for a sort of silver bullet and this one metric that tells me all. Who to fire, who to promote, is it on track or not, right?
Yeah, if you're making a statement that creating a lot of pull requests will bring me money, then you're probably wrong.
The good metric will be probably not the lines of code, but what you do day to day is actually lines of code.
CEO wants to know developer productivity for different reasons than CFO, and CTO.
Hi, my name is Marcin and welcome in Product Odyssey, the series where we explore how to build products fundamentally better. Today with me is again Maciej.
Hello.
CTO at Vasco and Adrian.
Hello.
Tech lead at Vasco. And today we'll be talking about developers' productivity. Thing that maybe doesn't sound controversial, but as soon as we will land on discussions with the C-levels or the startup owners, it's problematic to find out what is the metric, how to measure productivity, what is one single area that you can put on your table and see immediately, is my team efficient or not? Is the developer efficient or not? And let's start from maybe a basics. Why we should actually measure and why there is so much need behind for measuring developers or team productivity. Any points to start with?
I think the question why you want to measure developer productivity depends on the role you have in an organization. So there are multiple roles that want an answer to this question, but the actual question is different depending on why you need to add this question. So for example, like CEO wants to know developer productivity for different reasons than CFO, and CTO wants to know the developer activity for completely different reasons than, for example, the HR department wants to know. So I think the best idea here to start is to basically split this question by role and answer it one by one.
Yeah, adding to that, you can even ask this question to lower levels of in your company. For example, even developers probably want some feedback or some metrics to know that they are performing well, and so you can better evaluate whether someone deserves promotion or who is underperforming. So you can help those person like debug their productivity, right? So to find out what is going wrong.
Right. For promotions, for development, and also from the perspective of the board, we can think about monitoring. Am I on the right track with the budget? Am I on the right track with the product development and timelines? And I want to just know if the organization is efficient. Any other specific examples or the use cases that you see are unique or you have spotted in your experience that are not from this box?
I think one of additional reasons that quite often is coming up in many organizations is we want to measure developer productivity because we want to measure everything. And we measure other departments, right? So we measure HR, we measure sales, we know exactly detailed metrics on other like production kind of departments. So we can make improvements. We can calculate whether this business line is actually profitable for us. So we have metrics everywhere. And at the same time, there is this engineering department, kind of like magical. We need them. They are doing a good job for us. But once we try to put some metrics on them, they tell us that, well, it's not possible. We cannot measure it. It's intangible. It's basically, you cannot do it. Go away.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. And we are searching for this one single metric, right? Ideally. So we're searching for a sort of silver bullet and this one metric that tells me all. Who to fire, who to promote, is it on track or not, right?
Yeah, exactly. Other departments have, you know how many like deals are being closed, right? Or whether you're profitable or not. But in engineering departments, it's really hard to find this kind of one single metric. And for many non-technical or less technical CEOs or boards, it's very attractive to them to also find this single metric for the engineering department.
And this thought that you can measure every department comes probably from the past, where the engineering that we know today consists, like it was tried to be compared to the old things, like when you are working in a factory, you're being measured, for example, how many cars did you produce, right? And we try to reduce the complexity of the engineering department to this kind of like a single metrics, but like it's not desirable to be just a single metric, right?
Yeah, and this is actually maybe not even complexity, right? But I agree with this fact that we are trying to streamline that and compare it to any other from the past. But this assumes, as you have mentioned, the production mode. So this kind of like a predictable approach, whereas we know that product development is research and development with big focus on research. So we are innovating. So it's not basically sequential, right? So therefore, you cannot apply the same metrics. Still, we agree that you can measure that. It's only the concept that it's through the different lenses, right? You need to look at it differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would for sure say that you want to measure something, or maybe you just want to measure something, but then you need to think about what you will get from measuring that, right?
Right.
Because going back to this example of the cars, like you can assume that creating a car means that you can sell it. This means profit, right? In engineering that we know today, you kind of like you don't produce many sellable copies of the software. You create a software, right? And then you sell it based on various subscriptions or other ways of.
So everything is unique, right? This is what you are trying to point out. It's not a repeatable process. It's not that I'm creating 27, in this example, 27 cars or parts, right? I'm creating almost a different feature of the car or a different car every time, right?
Kind of. Like I would also say that this is more of a continuous process than like a finished one. Like creating a car means that it is done, right? From point A to B.
Okay, and what you're suggesting is that in the software development, it's not so that you can define what is this beginning and the end, right? That's what you are saying.
Well, in my career, even after you finish a product, there is the maintenance.
Sure,
right?
The life cycle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but.
Okay, so it's. I think that what we are landing here is the concept of, if we are measuring, depends on, we haven't entered that yet, but it depends of what portion you want to measure of your work output or outcome. And what you are saying is that on the scale of the life cycle of the product, we are not finishing a product. So it's not project management that I have defined the project, it's finished, it's done, I'm going home. It's more or less continuous evolution of that. And therefore, it's hard to say that I'm productive, I finish this project, and this kind of metric for developer, number of completed projects, it's probably not the level that you want to land on, right?
Yeah. What I'm trying to say here is that it just cannot be reduced to the simple thing that you can measure on, to a one single thing. And that's basically it, like to sum up, right?
Right. I think you mean there's actually no like unit cost for a software, right? So once you create the software, it's infinitely scalable, right? So, okay, you can argue that there are hosting costs and so on, but basically those are like not important in the grand scheme of things. So basically there is like this diminishing cost of additional item, right? So this is completely different from like manufacturing, where you can actually split the cost of producing something into like unit cost and overall production cost.
Mm-hmm. Before jumping into then the what to measure or how, because this is already what we are touching, just wanted to close this on the level of justifying that we agree all that there is a need for measuring, right? It's not something that we want to say that there is no justification, so don't measure at all because they are wrong. The need is there. We just need to agree what is a good way to measure it or a good way to evaluate.
I think the need is there, and maybe I'll say something controversial, but I think that from a CTO standpoint, we should measure developer productivity. I'm not saying this is easy, and I think we'll talk later on how to actually do it properly, but we should measure it. Otherwise, people with those needs, like CFO or CEO or board or other departments that actually have those needs would not go away just because we not want to measure it. They will find a way. They will hire like McKinsey or other consultancy that will basically go in, bring in their frameworks, and they will find some way to measure developer productivity. This may not be a right way to do it. This may be actually may produce a very, very bad results in the long time, in the long run, but still they will do it somehow. So to be proactive and to give them solutions for those questions, we should actually try to measure it before, and in the process it will also help us to be more productive, because there is many valid reasons to measure developer productivity, right? So in case of board or like CEO or CFO, we want to make sure that if we put money on the project, this project is actually going to be, we're going to have some kind of return on it, right? In case of HR department, we want to ensure that we promote the right people, that salary is fair, that we fire the right people, right? So let's say that we need to do a cut. Right. How do we decide who we need to let go?
Right? Or who to promote, right? And
if we cannot measure it efficiently, then these very hard questions are becoming impossible, right? And there are many valid reasons to actually measure developer productivity, but most often than not, the need of the questions that those groups ask are actually they're asking for a different thing. Their original needs are different that they're asking for, right? Because they want to grade developers or different kind of metric calculated to a single digit to basically order some projects or people in line, and then make a decision based on this, most often than not. And I think the right approach here is to actually go one step deeper, ask why they want this measurement, why they want to have this list, what their actual goal is here, and then try to find out some solution to actually help them with their problems, and at the same time, do not harm the developers in the process.
Right. Just to summarize those 3 points, because you have added one, you have added the urgency, right? So the fact that it's not only that the need is there, but if you don't address it as a development team, as an engineering lead, if you don't address it right now, sooner or later somebody will find out, either somebody who will measure that or measure that correctly or not correctly, and therefore it's good that you'd find it on yourself sooner on. So it's urgency, and then those 2 points that you've mentioned on consequentially, the asking why and defining what is behind the question. It's actually almost moving back us to the product development and agile, right? If I have a user story functionality, it's good that I'm asking why the person needed a fork. Is it for eating or for killing somebody or anything else? So the why behind is really important before you find out the metric. I remember the good metrics or frameworks for coming up with the KPIs was goal question metric that you can rely on, which again is the same concept, right? You start with the business goal, then the question how to actually measure that, and then you only land on the metric, right? But this is then we are opening the back with metrics. So what are the good, or maybe even starting with the anti-patterns, what are the worst metrics I can put on developers?
Well, okay, so if you mentioned developers, then I would say that you will receive what you measure. So this will make the company focus on hitting those metrics, on making sure that they are high if you want them high, or low if you want them low. but this will basically shift your company in that direction. And this is, and you need to be very careful when you are deciding on the metrics that you create, because especially developers will wanna maximize. They want to maximize it and they want to game it, so they gain as much as possible from this, right?
It's not only developers, right? It's every person. If you measure me,
yeah, I'm just saying,
incentivize, it will be happening there.
Yeah, I'm just saying from my own perspective also, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So an example, a pretty common one. If you want to measure the developer productivity based on the lines of code produced, then you will receive a lot of lines of code. And especially right now in the era of AI and ChatGPT and or copilots and copilot-like, it can generate lots of code that you certainly don't want to they don't want to maintain, right, in that form, because it's good at providing at generating the code, but maintaining it's not.
Sure. So number of features, right? That would be the understanding, right? We are going to output.
Yeah, you can measure number of features. You can, for example, measure how many story points developers are fulfilling in a sprint. So you got this velocity metric, right? And this is what many companies are actually doing. And this can be done right, but it's also very easy to do it wrong, and also received bad results, because there are going to be some kind of like inflation of it. There is also lots of opportunities to tweak the metrics, and basically we don't want to have the feature out or this pull request out or the story points completed and so on. This is not what we are actually measuring for, right? We at least most of the companies are not being paid for producing story points. Their goal is to actually put out on the market some kind of feature, and we just use the story points to measure complexity of a feature. But the goal is to have this feature on the market and to actually get some make some impact on the market with this feature, right? So if we're going to measure story points, or for example, I don't know, pull requests with those features, right? Then we're going to just have more pull requests, because like you mentioned, developers tend to be like creative people, and they are great on finding loopholes and optimizing things. So if there is possibility to game the metric, so they will just do it.
I wanna add actually one thing to this pull request metric, because there can be use cases where this is actually useful, because if your developers have the tendency to create big pull requests, and this makes a code review a pain point for other developers, then maybe if your goal is to reduce the time for a review and make developers happy, that they can quicker review code or get the code reviewed, right? So then a number of pull requests might impact this, right?
But then it's not a productivity, right? It's the metric or the mean to create the right behavior, right? This is what you're saying.
I mean, this might be a tool, right?
Yeah, of course.
But again, like going back to what Maciej said, is you need to ask yourself, like, why are you measuring this particular thing? And if your goal, if you are stating if you're making a statement that creating lots of pull requests will bring me money, then you're probably wrong, right?
Okay, so don't measure the what is the output, individual output. I get that point, right?
I think you can measure, because like you mentioned, this is a tool, right? And everything depends on how you're going to use this tool. So if you're using this metric of number of pull requests or lines per pull request and so on, this is fine if, for example, you as a CTO want to like debug issues in your project. So why the pull request takes so long or other things. So this is completely fine to do it in this regard. But once you put the money into the mix, so you start using these metrics for, let's say, like performance reviews by the HR department or any other reason that actually involves some effect that is very that might be valuable for the developer, then this is where all the shenanigans will start to happen, and they will basically try to optimize it. And this completely makes the debugging, the issue part of it, it just makes it impossible.
It's something that we've said 2 times or 3 times already, right? That's and I agree totally on that. That's there is no single metric for productivity. You can measure and you should measure a lot of things, and you can measure. It depends on what you want to achieve. For a behavior, you can measure pull requests. You can measure number of lines of code if that's connected with some sort of right behavior change that you're after. And there is another point that you have mentioned, and this is the fact that you should measure lots of things as indicators, not as the one single metric that caused the decision, right? So it could be information for you, but it's depends on how you want to turn it into insight, which will be important. But let me challenge that a little bit from the metrics perspective. So lines of code, no. Story points, note. We have discussed that it's not ultimate metric. It should be what is the output. So Adrian, from today, your only goal is to increase revenue of our product by 25%. Go and tell me how productive you are.
Okay, I would say that certainly it is not only me that will make the money, and I want to emphasize here that it is very hard to measure individual performance, and it's easier, and I believe it's better for the company to measure the team's performance when it comes to going after the big goal, right? That your goal is to make money, to deliver things, and it is a lot easier to measure how many features a team delivered and how resilient they are, like they are not broken on the production. And measuring that is, I believe, a lot closer to the thing that you're looking for.
Okay. So not individual metrics, but there is this point of I can measure the team, and then you will say that it's not one team, but we have development teams, and then there is a product management, there is a marketing, so I need to measure the whole department. But I'm trying to just maybe find out a thing behind the fact that if I'm measuring too low on the level of lines of code, it's bad. And we need to know why. But if I will go too high and it will be too far detached from myself, I don't know how I'm impacting that. Therefore, it would be ultimate metric, right? If you can have a metrics and have a system that I know that if I'm doing this decision, it will impact this metric and ultimately it will impact revenue. I would love to have developers which are coming up and saying like, we need to do this feature, not this one, because that's a higher revenue and we know it. And that's our hypothesis, right? But probably we're talking also about on what level I should have this question answer, why or what is the impact of this metric. So the revenue probably is not the goal, right? Is there anything between?
Yeah, so this is a difficult question, and we actually make it even hard currently because you ask about the bad ways of measuring it. We talk about like lines of code and everything. I think this is quite obvious, and also there is this big other part like the revenue, like the final impact. And if you are a for-profit company, then yes, this should be the goal for everyone inside your company to actually improve the revenue, or rather improve the shareholder happiness, because it's not always the revenue, but there's a different topic for a different discussion. But there are many stages between you're actually doing something as a developer and actually having this result as a increased revenue. So one model that I particularly like is to categorize this into 4 phases, so to speak. So there is the effort, So all of the things that you actually are doing, you are trying to do the things that you can actually do depends only on you and on your sole actions. Based on those efforts, there is some output. So let's say that you work for many hours, you write code. The output of it would be a code written, right? There is some kind of deliverable that you can share with others. Other people can also contribute to it, work based on it. And this is the output of your work. But many metrics actually focus on those first two steps because it's easier to measure. You can measure the effort, how long is someone working, or the output, so how many code someone has written. But this is not the goal. We're not writing for it. We're not writing the code for the sake of writing the code, right? It's most often it should be actually the opposite. So what we should measure is why we have written the code in the first place. So the outcome. So after the output, we get the outcome. So what is the effect of the code that we have written. So in most cases, there is some kind of feature or some kind of change in our app or some kind of behavior that will, by this code, induce on our users or our customers or any kind of change we want to make in the world. And this is the outcome of our work. And this is not the end of the story because the outcome itself is not the final step, because what we actually are striving for is the impact. So the last step. So the outcomes, I hope, should affect in the impacts that we are hoping for, right? So this is the holy grail of doing things, basically. So we got the effort, output, outcome, impact categories, and as we go further down the road, it's less and less individual contribution and more and more depends on basically the whole teams or even the whole organization. It's being harder and harder to measure. It depends on your metrics.
But what you're probably trying to say, just correct me if I'm wrong, is not the fact that further that I will go in this graph, the better metric I will have. It's about the fact that it's, of course, more meaningful metric down the road, but it needs to be a system, right? That's I need to, if I'm having one metric, I need to know what kind of metric on outcome it is impacting, what kind of metric on impact it is actually connected, right? So having this as a system to visualize the impact, so it's like OKRs, or if you go with the Go question metric, I need to have a connected system so I know this single metric is not for me to judge as alone, but I need to judge it as a system, right? So if this is not working, I'm looking what is the down the road. Is that what you're trying to say with this?
Exactly. Yeah. So you should look at as a whole picture, and basically all of those steps need to have some kind of check and balances to ensure that it makes sense overall, right? So spending lots of time on writing multiple lines of code and delivering lots of feature, it's not meaningful on itself, right? Those features actually need to need to have the impact on the actual market and our users. So we need to write the right features, right? So
delivering 20 features doesn't mean anything unless it's actually a return on investment or the impact.
Yeah.
But then if we will go right now and Adrian will go to the team and say, like, from now on, we are measuring not the number of features that we deliver, we are measuring the impact, so the revenue itself. How you are measuring day to day that you are doing a good job or not? What is the measure of progress then? Are you able to derive it from this?
So there are some methodologies for that are maybe like a guidelines for us. What is a good outcome that can lay down a good impact, that have a good impact on your company? And like the first one that comes to mind is DORA, that comes from Google. And that one basically, to put it simply, it measures, for example, how often you deliver things, how often you update your software, what is the time for that software to recover from errors on production environments, and what is how many features that you actually deliver to production are working the way you design it to be. So what I mean here is, are there any bugs on production, right? And so these are like the main points of this.
Right. So what you're saying is that again, we've moved away from basically finding a good metric, one metric, but we are talking about the system. And what you're saying is that we should rely, and that's correct approach probably, right? That we need to rely on the good practices that are on the market because they came from the experience. Dora is actually built framework from that. So taking experience, building on the experience of the others, we can have those set of standard metrics to measure the individual and the team productivity in the modern systems. They are mostly on DevOps, but basically this is the lead time. So I agree on that. There is, again, probably we can mention the space extension of that. So we can connect that and have the system that measures better. The latest McKinsey article was actually pointing to that as we have discussed recently on this. But that's giving you like the bucket or the sea of metrics, what I can select. Any hints on should I take just everything and let's see what will come up and start to measure that? Because this will still not answer my initial question that how do you know day by day that you are productive or not? And that's a hard question, right?
And that's a hard question.
Because what I'm after is the fact that we are agreeing that the good metric will be probably not the lines of code, but what you do day to day is actually lines of code. The interesting thing is only to not look at it from the perspective of just this one separate metric.
I actually disagree. So
Okay.
Modern developer job they're actually doing is not writing code, right? So
that's what I was after. Yeah.
Okay, so you got me. If life would be much simpler if all of the developers do every day is just to write code, and then it would be much easier to hire new developers, and probably by now all developers would be gone because AI could also write code. And even not today, then in like next few years, probably AI would be better at writing code than most of the developers. But writing code is just a small part of the developer workflow. The actual goal of engineers is to engineer things and to actually make the right things, right? To evaluate, to find better solutions to a problem, to think about the problem and try some maybe other solutions that are probably better suited for solving the problem, right? So this is why all of the developers should be put in a loop with your business goals. This is why putting the revenue or other high-level impact metrics on their day-to-day mind is actually a good thing, because this is how they can change their behavior. Maybe this feature does not make sense. Maybe they can maybe they can drop it. Maybe they can deprioritize other things. Maybe they can prioritize other things. So if we empower them to be proactive, if we put them into the loop, then they can make the impact, right? They can actually enforce, make the changes in the daily work that will actually have some impact on the outcome that you are looking for.
Too often I see, and this is from my experience even from the past, I see the situation that we try to hide ourselves. I'm talking about the managers, I'm not talking about C-level. We try to hide behind the metrics and make a decision from the perspective of the dashboard, right? And to just simplify it. And very often we find ourselves in a situation that I want to have this metric to just not go to the team and not ask and just make a decision based on that because it's too much for me. I cannot go there. Whereas if I'm going to the team and I will sit down with them and I will start to ask question, are we effective or not? Immediately, I haven't seen the situation that the team will say, I don't know if I'm effective or not. Probably, all the metrics are saying that it's good. No. Every single team will say, oh my God, do you want to have it alphabetically or by the impact? We can change all the stuff. Which means that there is two things, right? There are two things. One is, this is not the something that you can capture through the one metric, but it's obvious if you spend the time with the team and you can figure it out with the team, right? What kind of improvement you can do, what kind of efficiency you can boost, or if we have efficiency or not, developer experience metrics and so on. But the other thing is the fact that this kind of single metric assumes that writing code is the only thing that you do. And which is not the case, which is creative work. And it's hard to capture speed of problem solving, right? So I've solved 7 problems, class B, and then 27 story points and 2 lines of code and produce 5 bugs. Am I productive? So there is the human factor of that probably. And then there is also the fact that measuring, it's not only measuring the lines of code. This opens lots of doors, but I don't believe that if you ask anybody, measure my productivity, they will point out those kind of things, right? And it's omitted, and it guesses why.
Which part is omitted?
I mean, the fact that it's not the single metric. We still try to find out the silver bullet for that, right? I want to measure the developer's productivity. Are they productive? If I will come to a team, I can get that information right away. If I will bring 2 teams and discuss how productive you are, what is your system, I can even say, and this is not the hard metric, but I can say which team is more productive or not. It's a feeling also, right?
Yeah.
And can I capture that as a metric?
You can sometimes, but it's not easy to do, right? Because this is basically a difference between like qualitative and quantitative metric, right? So we want to have some kind of number at the end, and we need this number because we probably want to sort similar things in order, right? To make some decisions.
Manage through Excel.
This is why we win this number, right? And like you mentioned, this the actual developer productivity is something that you cannot quantize into a single number. This is something that is obvious for someone working on a day-to-day basis, right? So if you go and talk to some tech lead or other developers in the project, they will most likely be aware that this guy is much more productive than this guy, right? This comes often is correlated with seniority and also with other factors, but people tend to feel this kind of thing. Once you go up and up and up, it's less visible, and you need to be based on some kind of numbers. This is why you are asking to produce those numbers so we can act on them. Yeah. And it's really hard to quantize. And I think that the role of CTOs or tech leads is to actually educate the people that are asking those questions, to educate them why this is a very difficult topic, and try to rephrase the question. Why do you need this number? How are you going to use it? How maybe I can help you differently to solve your problem, right? Because maybe this is not the actual number you're going for. Maybe your need can be solved with something that I know that can be measured, but you do not, because you don't have this hands-on experience, right? So the communication here is, I think, vital, and we should measure, we should solve those needs of other groups in the organization, but we try to find out first why they want to do it, and then try to find this best solution. Maybe there is some kind of way to measure this feeling and quantize this into some kind of form.
Okay. And here, I wanted to say that if you want to, like, going back to the question of measuring whether one developer is productive or not, and the thing that Maciej mentioned is you need people to be hands-on with the team, because it's people's perspective that know that this person is the most productive within the team. That's because it cannot be grasped with just one little single metric, because the world is just complex, right? And it's too many factors to put into place. Probably also it cannot be generalized for each company, and probably it will differ across companies.
Okay, and even inside of so it will be different between the teams and between the systems, and that's coming from the complexity, from the different technology, right? It's a research part, not the
and probably the goals that you set.
Yeah,
right. This is also a very important.
That's again
factor.
the thing. But isn't that then pushing us to understanding of then should I search for a metric, or should I assume that every case is different and I need to make sure that I'm improving? So this concept of basically either system is improving or declining. There is no status quo always. As an engineering leader, I should make sure that I'm improving with the team and continuously doing that, rather than trying to find out the one metric that will tell me we are on the track or not, right?
So I read about this, that some teams, or rather team leaders or managers, used to note what accomplishments they've achieved within a team, and probably if you have that, you can probably also find out which persons stood by this, and this is like something that can give you a good direction to kind of see what this person, what impact that person had. But I also wanted to mention one story, that it's not always like sometimes you need to go very deep into the team to know that this person is productive or not, because and this is a story about the worst programmer I know, and there was this guy that produced no story points each sprint, and there was a decision to let that person go from the firm. But if you went down into the details, then it was that this person was actually helping all other developers on the team and making sure that team is performant. And that guy on his own made the code base a lot more resilient, because the solutions were well written and covered by tests, and basically the quality of the features delivered was very high. And this is like you could sum it up with you should prefer quality over quantity, right?
In most of the cases, yes.
In
I
most
could
of the
challenge
cases,
that. But
yeah.
that actually opens another aspect, which is also pretty interesting. And this is the fact that one thing is that writing a code is not always what you want to measure and what you want to focus on, helping the team and removing obstacles or taking care of even through the PRs. I would not say that this is like a go-to solution, that you should always have a person who is not writing a code but watching out for everybody else. There is some balance there, but it's a great anecdote and a point to take from that. But there is one more aspect there, and we tend to, through simplification, always fall into that. The productivity of the person, even if we have one metric, will be productivity of the day. It could be different today, it could be different tomorrow, not because I'm better tomorrow, but for example, tomorrow I have less obstacles on the way, or it was a better weather. So let's just remember it's a human factor, right? It's not that I'm performing every time the same. It's not basically execution of the procedure. So there is multiple factors we need to find out. We need to remember it's a human factor included. Nobody wants to just go to work and perform as poorly as possible. At least nobody that I know. But that's something to take into consideration, right? You cannot take it as from without the context itself, right? And therefore, it's like if I would ask you, what is your example of the most productive day? You would not mention 27 story points, right? You would probably paint some picture how that looks like.
Like a single day.
Yeah, let's go into that, right? Like example of your most productive day.
I think I see where you're going. So my perfect production day is a day where I'm not interrupted. And I could actually even close with that thought. But yeah, I mean, there are lots of things, right? And it's very rarely that I don't have any meetings during that day. But you can optimize for this non-interruptions and like a deep focus state of mind, right? So this especially works best when you need to produce the code, right? But again, this is just a part of your work. What other thing is that when goals are straight, I mean, when I know ahead the goals and they are pretty straightforward, I don't have any more questions, then I'm also very productive because I don't have to wait for someone else to answer my questions, for example, right?
Right.
When I'm also not blocked by other persons, and this is also again the time spent, for example, waiting for code review that you are waiting on, right? So lots of factors.
I don't want to land on the statement that, okay, so you cannot measure that and just measure number of meetings. And if there is more than one or two interruptions, then you don't have productivity. But definitely the thing that probably would need to pull from that is that if you have a metric, if you want to measure and you measure the developers, make sure that you take that from the context also. If the environment is productive, if they have interruptions, if they have what they need, and only after that take that in consideration. What is there? What is the productivity? And then putting that into probably trying to move it back to the something as a takeaway or the something more tangible. I can say that, okay, there is no one single metric, build a system, measure it correctly, measure that through the environment. But let me state it a problem from the C-level or the startup owner. I want to start a project. I have 2 offers from 2 different companies. And maybe I have worked with them. Maybe I have examples of them. Let's assume that's how they worked. I need to compare them because the price is almost the same, but I need to say which one is better. Is there anything that you would rely or basically look at? I know there is no one metric, as we have agreed, to compare them, right?
But there are good metrics. So we spend lots of time talking about bad metrics, but there actually are good metrics. I would like to follow up on the topic. Of the perfect day, right? So if you ask engineer what is your perfect productive day, they will describe that you need to go into the zone and this makes you productive and this is the most efficient way. Yeah. But if you look from the perspective of a product owner or product manager, it's actually the days where the work is moving fastest forward towards your goals, right?
Towards the plan, yeah.
Yeah. So this is why, if you can, you should rather measure teams' productivity rather than individual productivity. First, it's easier to measure. Then you kind of balance out all of those things that we discussed a moment ago. So you can have a bad day, someone else can have a bad day. Also, it balance out the people that are actually very useful for the product, the worst programmer case that you mentioned, right? So this person actually helps the product moving forward by a lot, even though it's not contributing code directly. It doesn't mean taking this kind of person of the project makes the velocity of the whole team moves down, not up, right? So this person is obviously beneficial for the team, even if it's not contributing directly. This is why we should rather, if we can, measure the team's performance.
Because team performance and any examples are you have mentioned velocity, right? Again, it's the number of complexity points.
Depends on the case. This is why I also like DORA metrics, so the DevOps research and assessment metrics, because they are quite easy and they are applicable to any project on any team on any industry, because they are quite independent on the specific things for for different areas of.
But that means that you're relying on the lead time of the delivering functionality.
Yes, and this is a good start. Basically, this is a good base to start on. This should not be your final metrics, because they're usually are not. They're usually not enough on its own. But this gives you a good start to, for example, compare between teams, right? So if you got like 2 sub-product teams, and you can use Dora to very easily compare them, and most often you will have a pretty good measurement between those teams. So if someone gets a better lead time, their deployment frequency is much higher, they get less failure rate. Then
but what about the cases where you have
obviously they have to be better, even if they're doing a worse job.
Better,
probably.
Wait a minute. Is better or have a better environment? I mean, like I can have a teams which is working in the payments with the payment component, and the other team which is working on registration and simple component, faster lead times with the functionality. I cannot then mention, you're mentioning that the Dora metrics will tell me that this is a better team. I would not jump into that kind of conclusion. It's need to be connected with the complexity of work, right?
Not exactly. So Dora metric won't tell you which team is better. It will tell you which team is more efficient, and you want the teams to be efficient
in the current conditions. Okay.
Yeah. So of course, everything needs to be looked into a context. So if there is some, like maybe the less frequent deployment times for the payments team is okay, because the platform needs to be more stable and so on. But still, comparing more frequent deployments to less frequent, the more frequent are always better, right? So this is something that you can try to optimize, right? So we can compare. This is so agnostic. Those metrics are agnostic enough, so we can compare even different kind of product teams. And there also the Dora. The so-called organization standing behind it also got some kind of report, so we can compare on
the benchmarks on the market, right?
In your industry, right? So we can basically see whether you're ahead of the pack or lagging behind. So this is a good start, right? So if you're capable enough to create space metrics, so contrary to Dora, space does not provide you out-of-the-box metrics that you can use. This is more like a thought experiment to force you into actually creating those metrics. They give some examples. Some of them are not that great, because I believe there's also an example of lines of code that we already debunked that this is not the good metric.
As a standalone, no, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're capable enough of creating more specific metrics, then great, you should do it. But this is not an easy feat. We actually, shameless plug here, we actually built a tool some time ago just for this reason, to actually help create space metrics for the teams, because it's not an easy task. We use AI for this. This was a hackathon project. Later on, like few months later, we got CTO Compass, which is our tool, which basically starts from the idea. So right now, this tool is not only producing you space metrics, you can still ask it to do so, but it's more like a general advisor, but starts from exactly this need. So the initial need was, it's hard to create those metrics.
Right.
And I need someone to basically discuss with to create those metrics. I can hire some consultancy, or you can use this self-service tool.
Yeah, and it's all the things that we have mentioned, right? You need to start from the question, from the goal, and then build a system around that. It's not only to start to measure story points. Therefore, this kind of AI consultancy solutions or the example of CTO Compass can help you there. And this is the missing piece of puzzle that we are discussing. Would be probably the answer to how to approach the measuring of the productivity. Just one thing to build on top of that, because I think it's actually something that it's not mentioned in Dora and Space, at least not directly, which is obvious. And this is the fact that if you are measuring a metric and compare it to benchmark, this is a point of time. With my teams, I always more like to see the trends and see if we are improving or not, rather than the point of time, because it could be different due to the different factors. But sometimes I would prefer a team which is improving their speed of development dramatically, and they are not the best in the benchmark. And then the other team which is just delivering on the stable or declining, and the lead time is going down, right? In the benchmark, they will be better, but the roadmap that they are on, on the trend that they are on, that's the difference. So look at the trends also. That would be my point.
I think it's even more important, because like this gives you the best benchmark is actually your team from the past. Mm-hmm. So to make sure that you're actually moving in the right direction, and Dora is great for this, because it's so agnostic, so that you cannot go bad if you improve those metrics. So if you improve those metrics, even if you're still behind based on the overall benchmarks for the industry, that you're still doing a good job, right? So this, as a CTO, for example, I know the changes that I introduce into the teams, into the workflows, are actually beneficial, because we're moving in the right direction. If the metrics go down, then I know that something bad is happening, and I need to react accordingly.
Yeah, and about that, like the debugging of the teams. So like if something is going wrong, and you just notice this trend that everything is going down with your metrics, then there is a suggestion to use surveys and survey your developers, your people at the company, like what is going on. And here is a tricky thing, that you need to carefully build those surveys, and there's no like a one survey to gather all the data that you need. But you can start with something like how are you feeling with the developer experience? Like you can focus on that, for example.
That's amazing. I'm smiling because actually we are experimenting in one team about this concept, which is probably not connected to directly question how to measure productivity. But during the retrospective, team suggested that, okay, we are closing lots of action points on the retrospective, which seems it's productive, right? We are going somewhere. But the perception is, okay, we are closing 27 action items, but are we actually improving? Are we feeling that it's okay? And there was a great request can we actually start to measure developer experience, and can we start to measure even the mood, right? So you see the trend.
Yeah, exactly.
Am I improving, right?
And this is also that, we are people, right? And people have tend to, their mood impacts their productivity, right? And they can, of course, burn out, and then they will not be productive at all. This is the worst case, of course. But also like things that annoy them, like they need to wait for the tests to be finished like for a long time, and this disrupts their work, and also makes them angry, right? Because not everybody is happy that I have now a free time because my tests are running, right? Yeah. So I can watch some YouTube.
Unproductive work then, time.
But in reality, this is just very very disturbing, right?
Yeah, and measuring this is again the topic of measuring your potential and how much you can use that, right? Because for sure you have the developers which are better, more senior, and then more junior ones. But even if you have a ideal situation, you have two experts and two same level experts. One can be more productive today, and as we have discussed, and the other will be slow only because the distraction and maybe maybe team concept, even in what kind of team I'm working and so on. So we need to look at it from the system.
There's also other thing that actually personal individual performance is not correlated at all with team performance. Oh, yeah. So you can have a team of experts on stars that are great on each own, but the actual team performance could be really bad. And also the other way around, you can have not that experienced team, but they're actually delivering a great value. This is why if your final goal is to actually deliver some products, and you usually need to have some kind of team to assemble a team to make it, you should rather measure the team productivity rather than individual one, right? Even look at sports. even the best stars combined in a single team would not guarantee you that you have a great team, right? So you can have a striker from Barcelona, a goalkeeper from Juventus, put it in a single national team.
Yeah, now we're talking about Euro.
Yeah, and it won't guarantee you to produce the best team, right?
Yeah.
So you cannot correlate one from another. This is why you should also, depending on the question why you are measuring it, measure it completely differently, right? So if you're measuring your team performance, you're comparing vendors, you're making sure whether you need to continue this business line, you should rather look at team performance,
Right.
at their outcome, at their impact. If you have different kind of question, if you have a question who you should promote, or performance review kind of stuff, then you should rather look at individual performance, and there are different ways, different metrics to
And again,
to
it
look
will
at
be
it.
not one metric, it will be the set of things and the indicators. So we need to remember quantitative and qualitative. We need to remember human factors and the context, right?
Yeah, and there's also the Goodhart law, so which states that once a measure becomes a target, it stops to be a good measure, right? So once, for example, the performance reviews, if you explicitly make promotions based on some of those metrics would be gamed on, and
As we've discussed,
they won't be a good metric anymore.
It could be intentional, right? If I want to have right behavior, it's okay with that. But let's remember, right?
Yeah, but it's really hard to do it. You need to have like check and
I
balances, make sure that it's not possible to play the metrics for personal gains, because people tend to do it. A good practice is to, once you introduce some kind of metrics, is to try to red team those metrics. So basically, try to hack them, try to make some kind of try to go into the shoes of the people you are trying to measure, and see whether they can game the system, because they will do it. This is practically guaranteed.
I like that. I like also the concept that if you have a metric and you say that, okay, one single metric, right? Like time to PR or number of peer review time in the peer review or so on, or the lead time of the feature. If you see that this is declining, which hypothesis from your side is that it's actually going bad and you need to react. If you analyze it, you will look at the whole value stream of the whole team, and you analyze it how that fits into the whole picture, right? So 2 hours in the code review, is it bad if we are delivering 27 times a day and have a continuous integration and so on? Or if we are releasing once a month, and this is basically the situation with the banking cases, for example. So having that put in the context will always make a difference, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will make the difference also in that sense that if you are focusing on the deployment rate, then you'll probably have a bigger bill, because your continuous integration systems will run much more.
Tell me my behavior. Yeah.
This is why there always needs to be some counter metric to ensure that this does not go out of hand, right? So,
exactly, and you have indicators, right? And you have the leading metrics and then the indicators.
Yeah, even if you put like revenue on the first as a only goal, it's also not a good metric, because people would tend to optimize the process for short-term returns, and at the same time, for example, customer satisfaction may go down, and in the long run, the company will even can go down, just because people want to have those bonuses based on the increased revenue, right? So this is why there is always needs to be some countermeasure, some check and balances, to make sure that we are not hurting some other important for us metric, because we are aiming for a different one.
Yeah, sometimes it can hurt. Like if you are targeting the individual contribution to gain money, right? Then you might lose some like big fishes. Because it usually is the team effort to catch the big ones, right? And a single person cannot handle it solely.
Yeah, you need to look at it as a team, and even the best, as we mentioned, right? And I don't know why we're still talking about this sad thing with the Euro and Poland going out, but one hero will not change all the time. The team is the game here, right? You need to have a team contribution, and I would rather have like a best team, which is on average on individuals than one hero and then not performing team due to that.
You certainly don't want everybody for themselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. And therefore, I don't want to measure them like that, right? So this will be the thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to open more points here because we have started to talk about the probably area of personal development also, and how to create this kind of behaviors that the team will be more will gain the performance. We have opened the topics of the financials, right, and maybe the topic of how to select the right team with a cost-efficient approach. We can talk probably about that in the next episode, as this episode isn't flexible enough. So just to wrap it up right now, we've talked a lot about the metrics, how to not measure, what to measure, and how to measure, and how to look at it. From your perspective, 3 takeaways from the C-level executives. What would be your points from the discussion today? Who wants to start?
I think I can start. So basically, the first thing is to understand why you want to measure the metrics. So the need for measuring developer productivity came from many different people, from many different roles, many different departments, and try to first understand why they actually want to have this metric in the first place. So in case of like CFO, and they are curious why the engineering department costs so much, maybe a different approach would be better than, for example, from HR department when they need to, for example, give some kind of promotions or do a performance review, right? So if you are a CTO and want to debug problems in your teams because you are aware that the performance is not in a place where it could be, you want to debug it, then you'll probably use different measurements. If you're a developer, you want to make a self-assessment, this is also a completely different reason. So first, try to understand why there is this need for measuring, and then try to ask some follow-up questions why really you need to measure it, and then ask once again why really do you need to measure it. Yeah. So this is the only way to actually, you will be able to put the good metrics down the road. And once you get the actual reason, then you can try to find the metrics that you can try to calculate. The main framework that you need to have in mind is the effort to output to outcome to impact. And on the first 2 steps, so basically the effort and output, you can measure it just for the debugging purposes. So you should not make those measurements goals, but rather metrics that you use to ensure that your project is in a good health. So once you start rewarding people based on those metrics, you will be gamed, and you should not try to do it. You should put goals on the outcomes and impact, where if people try to game the system, then this is actually the good thing, because you want them to actually do it, right? You want them to be proactive, to play for the same goal, and you should put your actual measurable goals that you want to reward people on over there. So it's important to always red team your metrics. Try to game the system yourself. Make sure that there are check and balances in place so that all of the metrics are actually healthy, and you cannot, by optimizing one metric, hurt different metrics, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and from my perspective of a team leader or a tech lead, I would focus on the teams and not the individual performances when it comes to measuring like the overall impact. Of course, you can still use the measures of individuals to debug what is going wrong within the team, but this is only on that level. And this is because, first of all, measuring team performance is a lot easier and will give you a better results.
Okay. Amazing insights. From my side, I can say probably also 3 things that resemble the most in my head. And one is the the measurement of the productivity is not the work, exactly the lines of code that developer is doing, but it's actually far more the things, the problem solving, team effort, trying to find out how and what to build, not only building it. It's not brick and bringing a house. And the team effort also is important then from this context. The second thing is think about not template solutions. So there is no silver bullet as we are discussing. Probably there is a metric which is useful, maybe set of metrics, but you need to find out what works for you, and then using a question metric, using different approach to find out what kind of set is good for you, and asking those questions is really important. And the third thing is actually combined, right? So one is go and see, and actually metric will not always show the whole picture. So it's really worth of going down to the teams and actually spending time with them and figuring out if they are productive or not, if this is your goal. And see for trends in the whole picture. So am I improving? Am I declining? And this is what is important. And probably many more topics that I would summarize here and write a pretty long article from that if we are just trying to summarize the points. But that was super interesting. Hopefully we'll continue on this one. Thank you very much for joining us and listening. Hopefully that was insightful for you and you will take something insightful from this discussion. You can find us on YouTube, Apple platform, and Spotify. So subscribe and send us comments or feedback if you find it fitting. And looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you. Take care.